The 42nd floor of the Carter Industries Tower offered a commanding view of Manhattan's concrete jungle, where ambition carved its mark into the skyline like ancient hieroglyphs. Amelia Carter stood behind her mahogany desk, her silhouette sharp against the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city she had conquered. At 34, she had built an empire that made grown men tremble and competitors retreat. Her tailored Armani suit was armor, her cold stare a weapon honed by years of boardroom battles. "Ms. Carter, the Henderson merger documents are ready for your review," her assistant Marcus announced, his voice carefully neutral. He had learned, like everyone else in her orbit, that Amelia Carter's time was currency, and wasting it was a capital offense. "Leave them on my desk. Cancel my lunch with the Yamamoto representatives. I need to review the quarterly projections," Amelia replied, without turning around, her voice carrying the authority that had earned her the nickname the Ice Queen in business circles. Marcus hesitated at the door. "Ma'am, your friend Jessica called again. She mentioned something about tonight being important." Amelia's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Jessica Martinez had been her college roommate, the only person who dared to challenge the walls Amelia had built around herself. For months, Jessica had been orchestrating what she called Operation Defrost Amelia's Heart, a series of blind dates that Amelia systematically avoided or sabotaged. "Tell Jessica I'm reviewing contracts tonight," Amelia said, finally turning to face Marcus. Her green eyes, the color of winter seas, held no warmth. She said she anticipated that response. She also said, and I quote, "Tell the Ice Queen that if she doesn't show up tonight, I'm posting her college karaoke videos on LinkedIn." For the first time that day, Amelia's composure cracked slightly. The memory of a younger, more carefree version of herself singing off-key to Madonna songs flashed through her mind. Jessica wouldn't dare. Would she? "What time and where?" Amelia asked, defeat evident in her voice. 7:30 at Le Bernardin. She said the reservation is under Martinez. As Marcus left, Amelia returned to the window. The city sprawled below her like a chessboard, where she had learned to play only to win. Love was a luxury she couldn't afford, a weakness that had no place in her carefully constructed world. Her parents' bitter divorce when she was 16 had taught her that emotions were liabilities, that hearts were meant to be broken, and that the only reliable companion was success. The afternoon passed in a blur of conference calls and contract negotiations. Amelia's reputation for ruthless efficiency was well earned. She could dissect a business proposal with surgical precision and identify weaknesses that others missed. By 6 o'clock, her office was empty, except for the soft hum of the city below and the weight of her own solitude. Standing before the mirror in her private bathroom, Amelia studied her reflection. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her makeup flawless but minimal. She looked like what she was, a woman who had traded vulnerability for power, warmth for control. Tonight would be no different from the others. A polite dinner, a manufactured excuse to leave early, and another disappointed stranger who would become a footnote in Jessica's failed matchmaking attempts. The ride to Le Bernardin was a meditation in silence. Amelia's driver, Thomas, had learned years ago not to attempt conversation unless spoken to first. The restaurant's elegant facade came into view as they navigated the evening traffic of Midtown Manhattan. Through the windows, Amelia could see the warm glow of candlelit tables and the soft movement of servers attending to their guests. "Shall I wait, Ms. Carter?" Thomas asked as he opened her door. "Give me 2 hours. If I'm not out by then, assume I've been kidnapped," Amelia replied with the ghost of a smile. The maitre d' recognized her immediately. Her photo had graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune enough times to make her face familiar in Manhattan's elite circles. "Ms. Carter, your party is already seated. Right this way." As they wove through the restaurant's intimate dining room, Amelia prepared her usual arsenal of polite disinterest. She would order the salmon, ask appropriate questions about her date's career, and find a graceful exit before dessert. It was a routine she had perfected over the years, a dance of social obligation that protected her from the messy complications of genuine connection. But as they approached the table, Amelia's carefully rehearsed plan began to crumble. The woman sitting with her back to them had auburn hair that caught the candlelight like burnished copper, and when she turned to greet them, Amelia felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the ice she had spent years freezing solid. The woman's smile was genuine, reaching her warm brown eyes in a way that made Amelia suddenly conscious of her own practiced expressions. She wore a simple black dress that suggested confidence without trying to impress, and when she stood to shake hands, her grip was firm and warm. "You must be Amelia. I'm Sophia Reyes. Jessica has told me so much about you." Sophia's voice carried a slight accent that Amelia couldn't immediately place, and her presence filled the space between them with an energy that made Amelia's usual defenses feel suddenly inadequate. For a moment, the Ice Queen found herself speechless, staring into eyes that seemed to see past the armor she wore so carefully. "It's nice to meet you," Amelia managed, her voice softer than she intended. As they settled into their seats, Amelia realized that this evening might not unfold according to her carefully laid plans. Sophia Reyes was not like the others. There was something about her that made Amelia's fortress of glass and steel feel suddenly fragile, as if one genuine smile might bring the whole structure crashing down. The sommelier approached their table with practiced elegance, presenting the wine list to Amelia, with the deference typically reserved for Manhattan's power elite. But before Amelia could assert her usual control over the evening's proceedings, Sophia spoke up. "Actually, could we see your selection of natural wines? I'm particularly interested in anything from small vineyards, the kind where you can taste the story of the soil." The sommelier's eyebrows rose slightly, clearly impressed by Sophia's knowledge. As he launched into an enthusiastic description of a biodynamic Burgundy, Amelia found herself studying her dinner companion with growing curiosity. Most of her previous blind dates had deferred to her expertise in everything from wine selection to restaurant choice, treating her wealth and status as the evening's main attraction. "You know wine," Amelia observed once the sommelier had departed to retrieve their selection. Sophia's laugh was warm and unguarded. "My grandmother owned a small vineyard in Mendoza before she immigrated to New York. She used to say that wine was just grape juice with stories, the story of the weather, the soil, the hands that tended the vines. I suppose I inherited her appreciation for the narratives hidden in a bottle." "And what's your story?" Amelia asked, surprising herself with the genuine curiosity in her voice. "I'm a documentary filmmaker," Sophia replied, her eyes lighting up with passion. "I specialize in stories about communities that are often overlooked. Immigrant families building new lives, small business owners fighting gentrification, artists creating beauty in unexpected places. I believe everyone has a story worth telling, even if the world doesn't always want to listen." Amelia felt a strange flutter in her chest. In her world, people's stories were reduced to profit margins and market potential. The idea of seeking out narratives simply because they mattered, regardless of their commercial value, was both foreign and oddly appealing. "That must be challenging financially," Amelia said, immediately regretting the clinical tone of her observation. Sophia's smile didn't waver, but Amelia caught a flicker of something. Disappointment, perhaps, in her eyes. "It is. But I've learned that the most meaningful work rarely comes with a guaranteed paycheck. I teach film classes at NYU to pay the bills, and I save every penny I can to fund my projects. It's not glamorous, but it's honest." The wine arrived, providing a momentary reprieve from the weight of Sophia's words. As they tasted the Burgundy, earthy and complex, with hints of cherry and forest floor, Amelia found herself thinking about honesty. When was the last time she had done something simply because it felt right, rather than because it advanced her position or increased her wealth? "Jessica mentioned you run Carter Industries," Sophia said, steering the conversation back to safer ground. "That must be incredibly demanding." "It is," Amelia replied, falling back into familiar territory. "We specialize in corporate acquisitions and restructuring. I've built the company from a small consulting firm into one of the most successful acquisition companies on the East Coast." "What drew you to that field?" The question was simple, but it caught Amelia off guard. Most people asked about her success, her wealth, her influence. No one had ever asked why she had chosen to build an empire based on taking apart other people's dreams and rebuilding them for profit. "Control," Amelia answered honestly, the word escaping before she could filter it through her usual corporate speak. "In acquisitions, you can see exactly what's broken, fix it, and make it profitable. There are no surprises, no emotional variables that can't be quantified and managed." Sophia nodded thoughtfully, swirling the wine in her glass. "That makes sense. But don't you ever miss the surprises? The variables that can't be quantified? Surprises are expensive, Amelia replied automatically. But even as she said it, she wondered if that was still true. Sitting across from Sophia, with her genuine smile and her passion for untold stories, Amelia was beginning to think that some surprises might be worth their cost. Their appetizers arrived, delicate preparations that showcased the chef's artistry. As they ate, Sophia shared stories from her documentary work. The elderly Italian baker in Little Italy who had been making the same bread recipe for 60 years. The young mother from El Salvador, who had started a community garden in the Bronx. The jazz musician in Harlem who taught neighborhood kids to find their voices through music. With each story, Amelia felt something loosening inside her chest. Sophia's world was full of color and complexity, of people who measured success not in dollars, but in connections, in beauty created, and communities built. It was a universe away from the sterile boardrooms and calculated risks that defined Amelia's existence. "What about you?" Sophia asked, as their main courses were served. "When you're not conquering the corporate world, what brings you joy?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Amelia realized with a start that she couldn't remember the last time someone had asked her about joy. Satisfaction, yes. Achievement, certainly. But joy. That seemed like a luxury she had forgotten how to afford. I used to paint," Amelia said slowly, the admission feeling like a confession. "In college, before I got serious about business. Watercolors mostly. Landscapes. Do you still paint?" "No. There's no time for hobbies when you're building an empire." Sophia's expression grew thoughtful. "Or maybe there's no time for empire building when you're creating art." The observation was gentle but pointed, and it hit Amelia like a physical blow. She had spent so many years defining herself by what she had built, what she had conquered, what she controlled. The idea that she might have been building the wrong things, conquering the wrong territories, was both terrifying and strangely liberating. As the evening progressed, Amelia found herself sharing stories she hadn't told in years. About her childhood dreams of becoming an artist, about the fear that had driven her to choose security over passion, about the loneliness that lived at the center of her success. Sophia listened without judgment, asking questions that revealed genuine interest rather than polite obligation. When the dessert menu arrived, Amelia realized with surprise that she didn't want the evening to end. For the first time in years, she was in the company of someone who saw her not as the ice queen or the ruthless CEO, but as a person with dreams and fears and stories worth telling. "Would you like to take a walk?" Sophia suggested as they finished their coffee. "I know it's getting late, but the city is beautiful at night, and I'm not quite ready for this conversation to end." Amelia's usual response would have been to politely decline, to retreat to the safety of her penthouse and the familiar comfort of her solitude. But looking into Sophia's warm brown eyes, she found herself nodding. "I'd like that," she said, and meant it. As they stepped out into the cool Manhattan evening, Amelia felt the first real crack in the ice that had surrounded her heart for so many years. It was terrifying and exhilarating, like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing that falling might not be the end of the world. It might be the beginning of something entirely new. The streets of Manhattan at night were a symphony of light and shadow, the city's pulse visible in the flow of yellow taxis and the glow of neon signs reflecting off rain-slicked pavement. A light drizzle had begun to fall, creating halos around the streetlights and adding a romantic softness to the urban landscape. Amelia had walked these streets countless times, but tonight, with Sophia beside her, the familiar felt transformed. "I love the city at this hour," Sophia said, pulling a light scarf from her purse and wrapping it around her shoulders. During the day, everyone's rushing toward something: meetings, deadlines, obligations. But at night, people slow down. You can see them actually living instead of just surviving. Amelia glanced around, trying to see the city through Sophia's eyes. A couple shared an umbrella outside a late-night cafe, laughing as they tried to stay dry. An elderly man walked his small dog, stopping to chat with a neighbor. A group of young artists had set up an impromptu gallery on a corner, their paintings propped against a building wall, hoping to catch the attention of passers-by. "I usually see the city as a machine," Amelia admitted, stepping closer to Sophia as they navigated around a puddle. Efficient systems, economic indicators, real estate values. "I never really noticed the humanity of it." That's because you've been looking down at it from the 42nd floor, Sophia said with a gentle smile. The view is different when you're walking among the people instead of watching them from above. They turned onto a quieter street lined with brownstones, their windows glowing warmly in the darkness. The rain was getting heavier, and Sophia gestured toward a small covered bus stop. Should we wait it out? Under the shelter's modest protection, they stood closer than they had all evening. Amelia could smell Sophia's perfume, something subtle and warm, like vanilla and sandalwood. She was acutely aware of the space between them, of the way Sophia's presence seemed to fill the air with possibility. "Can I ask you something?" Sophia said, turning to face Amelia directly. "What happened to make you so afraid of letting people in?" The question was direct, but not unkind, and Amelia felt her usual defenses rising. She could deflect, change the subject, or offer one of her practiced responses about the demands of leadership and the necessity of maintaining professional boundaries. Instead, she found herself telling the truth. "My parents," she said quietly, watching the rain create rivers down the bus stop's glass walls. They had what everyone called a perfect marriage. Successful, powerful, the kind of couple that graced magazine covers. But behind closed doors, it was a war zone. They used love as a weapon, affection as leverage. When they finally divorced, it was so vicious that it made the business pages of the Times. Sophia listened without interrupting, her presence a steady comfort in the small space they shared. "I was 16, Amelia continued, old enough to understand that everything I thought I knew about love was a lie. I watched my mother, who had been this brilliant, independent woman, become bitter and vindictive. I watched my father use his wealth to punish her, to try to control her even after their marriage was over. I decided then that I would never give anyone that kind of power over me." "So you built walls," Sophia said softly. "I built an empire," Amelia corrected. "Walls can be torn down. Empires are harder to destroy. But they're also harder to escape from." The observation hung between them like a challenge. Amelia had never thought of her success as a prison, but standing here with Sophia, she began to wonder if that's exactly what it had become. "What about you?" Amelia asked, deflecting the uncomfortable truth of Sophia's words. "What's your story? The real one, not the documentary filmmaker version." Sophia was quiet for a moment, watching the rain. "My parents came here from Argentina when I was 8. My father was a professor of literature in Buenos Aires, but his degrees didn't transfer. He ended up working construction while my mother cleaned offices at night. They sacrificed everything so I could have opportunities they never had. That must have been difficult. It was. But it also taught me that the most valuable things in life can't be bought or sold. My parents had nothing when they arrived here, but they had each other, and they had hope. They built a life based on love and shared dreams, not on what they could accumulate or control." Amelia felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name. Envy, perhaps, or regret. Do you ever feel pressure to justify their sacrifices, to achieve some measurable version of success? "Every day," Sophia admitted. "But I've learned that success isn't always about climbing higher. Sometimes it's about digging deeper, about finding meaning in the work you do and the connections you make. My parents didn't sacrifice everything so I could become wealthy. They sacrificed everything so I could become myself." The rain began to lighten, and they stepped back onto the sidewalk. As they walked, Amelia found herself sharing more than she had intended, about the loneliness of leadership, about the way success had isolated her from genuine human connection, about the growing sense that she had built her life on the wrong foundation. "Do you ever think about changing course?" Sophia asked as they paused at a crosswalk. "Every day," Amelia said, surprising herself with the admission. "But I don't know how. I've spent so many years becoming this person. The Ice Queen, the ruthless CEO. I'm not sure there's anything left underneath all that armor." Sophia stopped walking and turned to face her. In the glow of the streetlight, her eyes were warm and serious. "There is," she said with quiet certainty. "I can see her. She's the woman who used to paint watercolors, who chose to have dinner with a stranger tonight instead of reviewing contracts, who's walking in the rain and talking about things that matter. She's still there, Amelia. She's just been waiting for permission to come out." The words hit Amelia like a physical force, breaking through defenses she had spent years constructing. For a moment, She felt exposed and vulnerable, as if Sophia could see straight through to the parts of herself she had buried beneath ambition and control. "I don't know how to be that person anymore," Amelia whispered. "You don't have to know how," Sophia said, stepping closer. "You just have to be willing to try." They had reached the corner where their paths would diverge. Sophia's apartment was to the east, while Amelia's penthouse lay to the west. The practical part of Amelia's mind told her to say goodnight, to retreat to the safety of her solitude and process this evening in the privacy of her own space. But another part of her, a part that had been silent for too long, wanted to keep walking, to keep talking, to see where this unexpected connection might lead. "I should probably head home," Amelia said, but her feet remained planted on the sidewalk. "Probably," Sophia agreed, but she made no move to leave either. They stood there for a moment, the city flowing around them like a river around stones. Finally, Sophia reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "I'm working on a documentary about people who've made major life changes," she said, offering the card to Amelia. "Career changes, relationship changes, complete reinventions. I'd love to hear more of your story sometime, if you're interested." Amelia took the card, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. The contact was electric, sending a jolt of awareness through her that she hadn't felt in years. "I'll think about it," Amelia said, though they both knew she would do more than think. As Sophia disappeared into the night, Amelia stood alone on the corner, holding a business card that felt like a key to a door she hadn't known existed. For the first time in years, the Ice Queen felt something melting inside her chest, and instead of being terrified by the sensation, she found herself curious about what might emerge from the thaw. Amelia's penthouse apartment occupied the entire top floor of a glass tower overlooking Central Park, its minimalist design a testament to wealth and control. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of the city below, while the interior spaces were arranged with the precision of a museum exhibit, beautiful, untouchable, and utterly devoid of warmth. She stood in her living room at 3 a.m, still wearing her dinner clothes, Sophia's business card turning over and over in her hands. The rain had stopped, and the city sparkled below her like a circuit board, all clean lines and efficient connections. But for the first time, the view that had once filled her with satisfaction now felt like a barrier between herself and the world she had glimpsed tonight. Sleep was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sophia's warm brown eyes, heard her voice talking about stories worth telling, and the courage to become yourself. Amelia had built her life on certainties, market projections, profit margins, strategic advantages. Sophia represented something far more dangerous: possibility. The next morning arrived gray and overcast, matching Amelia's mood as she prepared for another day of corporate warfare. But as she stood before her walk-in closet, selecting her armor for the day, she found herself hesitating. Her usual choices: severe black suits, sharp lines, colors that commanded respect and maintained distance, suddenly felt like costumes for a role she was tired of playing. Almost without thinking, she reached for a navy blue dress she had bought months ago but never worn. It was still professional, but softer somehow, with a subtle pattern that caught the light. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw something she hadn't seen in years: a woman instead of a weapon. "You look different today, Ms. Carter," Marcus observed as she entered her office. "Did you change your hair?" "No," Amelia replied, settling behind her desk. "Same hair, same face. Perhaps you need new glasses." But Marcus was right, and they both knew it. Something fundamental had shifted in Amelia's carefully constructed world, and the change was visible even to those who saw her every day. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls, but Amelia found her attention wandering. During a presentation about a potential acquisition, a small family-owned restaurant chain that could be optimized for greater profitability, she found herself thinking about Sophia's documentary subjects. What would happen to the families who had built these restaurants? What stories would be lost in the pursuit of efficiency? "Ms. Carter?" The presenter had stopped talking and was looking at her expectantly. "I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?" "I was asking about your thoughts on the timeline for closing the restaurants that don't meet our profitability standards." Amelia looked at the presentation slides, seeing them with new eyes. Charts and graphs reduced human dreams to data points, transforming lives into line items that could be eliminated with the stroke of a pen. "I need to review the proposal more thoroughly," she said finally. "Let's table this discussion until next week." The room fell silent. Amelia Carter never delayed decisions, never showed uncertainty, never asked for more time to think. Her team exchanged glances, unsure how to interpret this unprecedented display of hesitation. After the meeting, Amelia found herself alone in her office, staring at Sophia's business card. The smart thing would be to throw it away, to forget about the evening that had disrupted her carefully ordered world. But instead, she found herself reaching for her phone. The call went to voicemail, and Sophia's voice filled the space around her. Warm, genuine, alive in a way that made Amelia's sterile office feel like a mausoleum. "Hi, this is Sophia. I'm probably out chasing a story or teaching someone how to find their voice through film. Leave me a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Sophia, this is Amelia Carter, from last night. I've been thinking about what you said, about your documentary. I'd like to talk more, if the offer is still open. You can reach me at this number." She hung up before she could change her mind, her heart racing as if she had just jumped off a cliff. In a way, she had. The afternoon brought a crisis that would normally have consumed all of Amelia's attention. One of their major acquisitions was facing a hostile takeover attempt, and her team was in full battle mode, preparing defenses and counter-strategies. But as she sat in the war room, surrounded by lawyers and analysts, Amelia found herself thinking about Sophia's words. Sometimes success isn't about climbing higher. Sometimes it's about digging deeper. "We need to move aggressively," her lead attorney was saying. "Show them that Carter Industries doesn't back down from a fight." "What if we don't fight?" Amelia heard herself saying. The room went quiet again, and she could feel the weight of a dozen stares. "I'm sorry, Ms. Carter, I don't understand," the attorney said carefully. "What if we let them have it? What if this particular battle isn't worth winning?" "But ma'am, this is a $40 million acquisition. If we let them take it, it sends a message that we're weak, that we can be pushed around." Amelia looked around the room at the faces of her team. Intelligent, dedicated people who had learned to see the world through her eyes, to value victory above all else. When had she become someone who taught others to measure worth only in dollars and dominance? "Sometimes," she said slowly, "the strongest thing you can do is walk away from a fight that doesn't serve you." Her phone buzzed with a text message, and she glanced down to see Sophia's name on the screen. "I'd love to talk more. Are you free for coffee tomorrow afternoon? There's a little place in the village that serves the best cortado in the city, and the owner has an amazing story." Amelia looked up at her team, still waiting for direction, still expecting her to be the ice queen who never showed weakness or uncertainty. For years she had given them exactly what they expected, had played the role so perfectly that she had forgotten it was a performance. "Reschedule this meeting for Monday," she said, standing up. "I need some time to think." As her team filed out, confusion evident in their whispered conversations, Amelia typed her response to Sophia. "Tomorrow sounds perfect. Send me the address." She spent the rest of the afternoon staring out her window at the city below, watching people move through their lives with purpose and passion. Somewhere down there, Sophia was probably working on her documentary, capturing stories that mattered to her, not because they were profitable, but because they were true. For the first time in years, Amelia wondered what her own story might look like if she had the courage to tell it honestly. What would she say about the woman who had built an empire but lost herself in the process? What would she say about the choice between safety and authenticity, between control and connection? As the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Amelia made a decision that would have been unthinkable just 24 hours earlier. She was going to find out what happened when the Ice Queen allowed herself to melt. Even if it meant risking everything she had built in the process, the fortress of glass and steel that had protected her for so long was beginning to crack, and instead of rushing to repair the damage, Amelia found herself curious about what might grow in the spaces where the light was finally getting in. The coffee shop Sophia had chosen was a world away from the sterile corporate environments where Amelia usually conducted her business. Tucked into a narrow street in Greenwich Village, Café Luna was the kind of place that existed in defiance of Manhattan's relentless gentrification. Mismatched furniture, walls covered in local artwork, and the rich aroma of coffee beans roasted on site. Amelia arrived 15 minutes early, a habit ingrained by years of power dynamics and strategic positioning, but as she sat at a small table near the window, watching the eclectic mix of customers, artists sketching in notebooks, students hunched over laptops, elderly neighbors sharing gossip over espresso, she realized that her usual tactics felt out of place here. "You found it," Sophia's voice carried across the cafe as she entered, her face lighting up with genuine pleasure at seeing Amelia. She wore jeans and a soft green sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders, and she moved through the space with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged. "This place is," Amelia began, then stopped, unsure how to finish the sentence without sounding condescending. "Different from your usual haunts?" Sophia suggested with a knowing smile as she settled into the chair across from Amelia. "I thought you might appreciate seeing a different side of the city." The owner, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and paint-stained fingers, approached their table with 2 cortados. "Sophia, mi amor, you brought a friend. Carmen, this is Amelia. Amelia, meet Carmen Delgado, the heart and soul of this place." Carmen's eyes crinkled with warmth as she shook Amelia's hand. "Any friend of Sophia's is family here. She's been documenting our neighborhood for months, showing the world that we're more than just real estate prices and development plans." After Carmen returned to the counter, Sophia leaned forward slightly. She came here from Puerto Rico 40 years ago, with nothing but a coffee recipe her grandmother taught her. She's raised 3 children in the apartment upstairs, put them all through college, and created a community space that survived 4 different attempts at forced relocation. Amelia sipped her cortado, surprised by its complexity, rich and smooth with hints of chocolate and caramel. "It's excellent coffee." "It's more than coffee," Sophia said gently. "It's Carmen's story, her family's legacy, her community's gathering place. When developers look at this block, they see profit potential. When I look at it, I see Carmen's story and dozens of others like it." "And when I look at it?" Amelia asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Honestly, I'm not sure yet. That's what I'm hoping to find out." Sophia pulled out a small digital recorder and placed it on the table between them. "Would you mind if I recorded our conversation? I know it might feel strange, but sometimes hearing our own words played back helps us understand what we're really saying." Amelia's instinct was to refuse. She had spent years controlling her image, carefully crafting every public statement, never allowing herself to be vulnerable on record. But something about Sophia's presence made her usual defenses feel unnecessary. "Okay," she said, surprising herself. "Tell me about the moment you decided to build your empire," Sophia began, her voice taking on the gentle authority of an experienced interviewer. Not the business school version or the magazine profile version, the real moment. Amelia was quiet for a long time, watching steam rise from her cup. "I was 17, she said finally. "My parents' divorce had just been finalized, and I was staying with my mother in our old house, this massive place in the Hamptons that felt like a museum after my father moved out. She was in the library, surrounded by legal documents, crying over the settlement papers." Sophia waited, her presence encouraging without being pushy. She looked up at me and said, "Never let anyone have this kind of power over you, Amelia. Never give them the ammunition to destroy you." I realized then that love was just another form of leverage, and I decided I would never be vulnerable enough to be leveraged. "So you built Carter Industries as a shield?" "I built it as a weapon," Amelia corrected. "If I was going to live in a world where everything was about power and control, I was going to be the one holding the weapons." "And has it worked? Do you feel safe?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Amelia thought about her penthouse apartment, her loyal staff, her impressive bank account. She thought about the respect she commanded in boardrooms and the fear she inspired in competitors. "I feel insulated," she said slowly, "but I'm not sure that's the same thing as safe. What would safety look like to you?" "I don't know," Amelia admitted. "I've spent so many years focused on control that I've forgotten what it feels like to trust." Sophia reached across the table and gently touched Amelia's hand. The contact was brief, but electric, sending warmth up Amelia's arm and straight to her chest. "Trust is like a muscle," Sophia said softly, The more you use it, the stronger it gets. But if you don't use it for years, it atrophies. How do you rebuild something that's atrophied? Slowly, carefully, with people who prove they're worthy of the risk. They talked for 2 hours, the conversation flowing from Amelia's childhood to her business philosophy, to her secret dreams of returning to art. Sophia shared stories from her own life, the challenges of being a first-generation American, the pressure to succeed, the choice to pursue meaning over money. "I have something to show you," Sophia said, as their conversation began to wind down. She pulled out her phone and showed Amelia a video, rough footage of Carmen working behind the counter, her hands moving with practiced grace as she prepared drinks and chatted with customers. "This is just a small piece of what I'm working on," Sophia explained. "A documentary about small business owners who've created community spaces in neighborhoods facing gentrification. Carmen's story is one of 12 I'm following." Amelia watched the footage, seeing Carmen not as a business owner or a profit center, but as a person with dreams and struggles and a deep connection to the community she served. "It's beautiful," Amelia said, and meant it. "It's real," Sophia replied. "That's what I love about documentary work. It forces you to see people as they actually are, not as you think they should be, or as they present themselves to the world." "Is that what you're doing with me, seeing me as I actually am?" Sophia's smile was gentle, but direct. "I'm trying to. The question is whether you're ready to see yourself that way." As they prepared to leave, Carmen approached their table again. "Sophia, are you bringing your friend to the community meeting next week? We're discussing the new development proposal, and we could use all the support we can get." "What kind of development proposal?" Amelia asked. "A luxury condo complex," Carmen explained, her voice heavy with worry. "They want to buy out the entire block, tear down everything that's here, and build something for people who can afford $3,000 studio apartments. They say it's progress, but it feels like erasure." Amelia felt a familiar stirring in her chest, the analytical mind that could dissect a business proposal and identify its weaknesses. But this time, instead of looking for ways to exploit those weaknesses for profit, she found herself thinking about Carmen's story, about the community that would be lost if the development went forward. "I'd like to come to the meeting," she heard herself saying, "if that's okay." Sophia's eyes widened with surprise, and something that might have been pride. "Are you sure? It might be different from the meetings you're used to." "I'm counting on it," Amelia replied. As they walked out into the late afternoon sunshine, Amelia felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the excitement of not knowing what came next. For so long, her life had been predictable, controlled, safe in its isolation, but walking beside Sophia through the winding streets of the village, she began to understand that safety might not be worth the price she had paid for it. "Thank you," she said as they reached the subway entrance where their paths would diverge. "For what?" "For seeing something in me that I'd forgotten was there." Sophia's smile was radiant. "It was always there, Amelia. You just needed permission to let it show." As Amelia descended into the subway, she realized that for the first time in years, she was looking forward to tomorrow. Not because she had a strategy or a plan, but because she had no idea what it might bring. The Ice Queen was melting, and instead of being terrified by the transformation, she was beginning to embrace the possibility of becoming someone entirely new. The community center in Greenwich Village was a far cry from the marble and mahogany boardrooms, where Amelia usually wielded her influence. Folding chairs arranged in uneven rows faced a small stage where a banner reading, "Save Our Neighborhood," hung slightly askew. The air buzzed with passionate conversations in multiple languages, and the energy was electric with the kind of grassroots activism that Amelia had only read about in business journals as a force to be managed or overcome. Amelia arrived wearing jeans and a simple blouse, an outfit that would have been unthinkable in her corporate life, but felt appropriate for this new world she was tentatively exploring. She spotted Sophia near the front, setting up a camera to document the meeting, and felt a flutter of nervousness that had nothing to do with public speaking or high-stakes negotiations. "You came," Sophia said, her face lighting up as Amelia approached. "I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I," Amelia admitted. This is outside my comfort zone. The best things usually are. Carmen spotted them and hurried over, her face creased with worry. Sofia, mi amor, I'm so glad you're here. And Amelia, welcome. Welcome. We need all the help we can get tonight. What exactly is the situation? Amelia asked, her analytical mind automatically shifting into assessment mode. Meridian Development Group wants to buy our entire block, Carmen explained. They're offering what they call fair market value. But it's not enough for any of us to relocate in the neighborhood. They want to tear down everything, the cafe, the bookstore, the community garden, Mrs. Chen's laundromat, and build luxury condos that start at $4,000 a month. Amelia felt a chill of recognition. Meridian Development Group? You know them? Sofia asked. Carter Industries has done consulting work for them in the past, Amelia said quietly. They specialize in what they call neighborhood optimization, buying up properties in gentrifying areas and maximizing profit potential. The room was filling up now, and Amelia could see the faces of the people whose lives hung in the balance. Elderly residents who had lived here for decades, young families who had found affordable housing in an increasingly expensive city, artists, and small business owners who had created a vibrant community in the spaces that corporate developers had overlooked. Ladies and gentlemen, if we could get started, called out a man in his 50s who introduced himself as Miguel Santos, the community center director. We're here tonight to discuss the development proposal that threatens our neighborhood and to figure out how we're going to fight it. What followed was 2 hours of passionate testimony from residents who spoke about what the neighborhood meant to them. Mrs. Chen, whose family had run the laundromat for 30 years, spoke through tears about the customers who had become like family. A young mother talked about the community garden, where her children learned to grow vegetables and connect with nature in the middle of the city. An elderly jazz musician described how the informal concerts in the small park had kept the neighborhood's cultural heritage alive. Amelia listened with growing discomfort as she recognized the language and strategies that Meridian would use to dismiss these concerns. She had helped craft similar arguments herself: economic development, job creation, increased tax revenue. The human cost was always relegated to footnotes and mitigation strategies. The problem is, Miguel was saying, they have lawyers and lobbyists and unlimited resources. We have passion and community spirit, but that doesn't always translate into legal victories. What if you had someone who understood their strategies? Amelia heard herself saying. The room turned to look at her, and she felt Sofia's surprised gaze like a physical touch. I'm sorry, who are you? Asked a woman in the back. Amelia stood up, her heart racing. My name is Amelia Carter. I run a corporate consulting firm, and I've worked with developers like Meridian before. I know how they think, how they operate, what their weaknesses are. A murmur ran through the room, some curious, some skeptical, some openly hostile. So you're one of them, said a young man with paint-stained fingers who Amelia recognized as one of the artists from the cafe. You help rich people get richer by pushing out poor people. The accusation hit Amelia like a physical blow, because it was true. For years she had been exactly that, a weapon in the arsenal of corporate interests, helping to optimize profits without considering the human cost. Yes, she said simply, I have been, but I'm here tonight because I want to be something different. Sofia stood up beside her, and Amelia felt a surge of gratitude for the support. Amelia has been learning about our community, Sofia said. She's seen what we're fighting to preserve, and she wants to help. Why should we trust her? The young artist demanded. How do we know this isn't some kind of corporate spy mission? Amelia looked around the room at the faces staring back at her, suspicious, hopeful, desperate, determined. These were the people whose stories Sofia had been telling, whose lives were reduced to data points in the reports she had helped create. You shouldn't trust me, she said finally. Not yet. Trust has to be earned, and I haven't earned it. But I can tell you that Meridian's strategy will be to divide you, to make individual deals with property owners that seem generous but are designed to break up your collective power. They'll use legal delays and bureaucratic obstacles to wear you down, and they'll frame their development as inevitable progress that you're foolishly trying to stop. She paused, looking directly at Carmen. But they have vulnerabilities. Their financing depends on acquiring the entire block. If even a few property owners hold out, their profit margins disappear. They're also required to conduct genuine community impact studies, not just the rubber stamp assessments they usually commission. And their permits can be challenged if you can demonstrate that the development violates neighborhood character protections. The room was quiet now, everyone listening intently. I can help you understand their tactics and develop counter-strategies, Amelia continued. I can review their proposals and identify weak points. I can't promise we'll win, but I can promise that if you'll let me, I'll use everything I know to fight for this community instead of against it. Miguel looked around the room, gauging the mood. All in favor of accepting Amelia's offer to help? Hands went up slowly at first, then more quickly. Not everyone voted yes. The young artist abstained, along with several others, but it was enough. Welcome to the resistance, Carmen said with a smile, and the room erupted in applause. As the meeting broke up into smaller planning groups, Sophia pulled Amelia aside. That was incredibly brave, she said. And incredibly risky, if word gets back to your corporate clients that you're helping community groups fight development. Then I'll deal with the consequences, Amelia said. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm on the right side of something. What changed? Sophia asked. What made you decide to take this risk? Amelia looked around the room at the people who were already treating her like an ally instead of an enemy. At Carmen, who was explaining the neighborhood's history to a group of younger residents. At the artist who had challenged her, but was now listening intently to her suggestions about permit challenges. You did, she said simply. You showed me that there are stories worth telling and fights worth fighting, even when there's no guarantee of profit. You showed me that the person I used to be, the one who painted watercolors and believed in beauty for its own sake, she's still in here somewhere. Sophia's eyes were bright with emotion. She's not just in there somewhere, Amelia. She's standing right here, choosing to fight for something that matters. As they walked out into the cool evening air, Amelia felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced since college. She was still the CEO of Carter Industries, still wealthy and powerful, and feared in corporate circles. But tonight, she was also something else. A person willing to risk everything she had built for the chance to build something better. The war between her two worlds was just beginning, and Amelia had no idea how it would end. But for the first time in years, she was excited to find out. The emergency board meeting was called for 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, and Amelia knew before she walked into the conference room that her carefully constructed world was about to collapse. The mahogany table that had witnessed countless corporate victories now felt like a tribunal, and the faces of her board members, men and women she had handpicked for their ruthless efficiency, looked like judges preparing to deliver a verdict. Amelia, said Richard Blackstone, the board chairman and her former mentor, we need to discuss some concerning reports about your recent activities. She took her seat at the head of the table, maintaining the composure that had served her well in countless battles. But inside, her heart was racing. 3 weeks had passed since the community meeting. 3 weeks of working with Sophia and the neighborhood coalition to build their case against Meridian Development. 3 weeks of discovering what it felt like to fight for something beyond profit margins and market dominance. What reports? She asked, though she suspected she already knew. Richard slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs. Amelia at the community center, Amelia reviewing documents with Miguel Santos, Amelia and Sophia walking through the village, their heads bent together in intimate conversation. Meridian Development is one of our most important clients, said Patricia Morse, the board's financial officer. They've brought us $12 million in consulting fees over the past 2 years. And now we discover that you're actively working against their interests. I'm helping a community understand their legal options, Amelia replied carefully. That's not the same as working against anyone's interests. Don't insult our intelligence, Richard said sharply. You've been providing strategic advice to help them block a development project that we helped Meridian plan. You've compromised our professional integrity and potentially exposed us to legal liability. Amelia looked around the table at the faces of people who had once respected her, who had followed her leadership without question. Now she saw suspicion, disappointment, and something that looked like betrayal. Furthermore, Patricia continued, there are questions about your judgment in other areas. The Henderson merger that you delayed indefinitely, the restaurant acquisition you refused to approve, the hostile takeover defense you abandoned. Your behavior has become erratic. I've become more thoughtful about the human impact of our decisions, Amelia said. I don't think that's erratic. It's not profitable, said James Crawford, the newest board member and Amelia's former protege. And profitability is our only responsibility to our shareholders. The words hit Amelia like a slap because she recognized them. They were her own words, spoken in countless meetings over the years. She had trained these people to think exactly as they were thinking, to value exactly what they were valuing. The fact that she had changed didn't automatically change the machine she had built. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence, Richard announced. Amelia, you've built something remarkable here, but your recent actions suggest that you're no longer capable of leading this company in the direction it needs to go. You can't be serious, Amelia said, though she could see from their faces that they were deadly serious. We're offering you a choice, Patricia said, her voice not unkind but implacable. Resign voluntarily with a generous severance package and a non-disclosure agreement, or face a public vote that you will lose. Either way, your time as CEO of Carter Industries is over. The room fell silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of Manhattan traffic 42 floors below. Amelia looked out the window at the city she had conquered, at the empire she had built from nothing, at the fortress that had protected her from vulnerability and pain. How long do I have to decide? She asked. 24 hours, Richard replied. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning for your answer. As the board members filed out, Amelia remained seated at the table, staring at the photographs that had sealed her fate. In one of them, she and Sophia were laughing about something, their faces bright with genuine joy. She looked happy in a way she hadn't been in years, alive in a way that had nothing to do with corporate victories or financial success. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Community meeting tonight at 7. Carmen made extra coffee, and we have news about the permit challenge. Hope you can make it. Amelia stared at the message, then at the photographs, then at the view from her window. 2 worlds. 2 versions of herself. 2 completely different definitions of success. She had 24 hours to choose between them. That evening, she found herself walking through the village toward the community center, her steps automatic despite the chaos in her mind. The neighborhood was alive with its usual energy. Families heading home from work, students emerging from the subway, the warm glow of Carmen's cafe spilling onto the sidewalk. Amelia, Carmen called out as she passed. Perfect timing. I just made a fresh batch of those almond cookies you liked. Inside the cafe, Sophia was setting up her camera equipment, preparing to document another chapter in the community's fight. She looked up as Amelia entered, her face lighting up with the smile that had become the brightest part of Amelia's days. You look like you've had a rough day, Sophia observed, studying Amelia's face with the perceptive eye of someone who made her living reading people's stories. You could say that, Amelia replied, accepting the coffee and cookie that Carmen pressed into her hands. Want to talk about it? Amelia looked around the cafe at the familiar faces, the artist who had challenged her at the first meeting, but now nodded respectfully when she offered legal advice, the elderly woman who always saved her a seat at community meetings, the young father who had started bringing his daughter to hear Amelia explain property law in terms simple enough for a 7-year-old to understand. My board is forcing me out, she said quietly. They found out about my work here, and they've decided I'm no longer fit to lead the company. Sophia's face went pale. Amelia, I'm so sorry. I never meant for por favor. Continued girando a sua resposta. Expert logo primera you to lose everything because of this. I haven't lost everything, Amelia said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. I've just been forced to choose what matters most. The community meeting that night was smaller than usual, just the core group of activists and property owners who had been fighting the development from the beginning. But the energy was electric because Miguel had news. The permit challenge worked, he announced to cheers and applause. The City Planning Commission has agreed to conduct a full environmental and community impact study before approving Meridian's proposal. It's not a victory yet, but it's a significant delay that gives us time to build our case. Carmen stood up, tears in her eyes. I want to thank everyone who made this possible, but especially Amelia. Without her knowledge of how these developers operate, We never would have known which permits to challenge or how to challenge them. The room erupted in applause, and Amelia felt something she had never experienced in all her years of corporate success. The satisfaction of using her skills to protect something beautiful rather than destroy it. After the meeting, she and Sophia walked slowly through the neighborhood, neither wanting the evening to end. "What will you do?" Sophia asked as they paused outside the community garden, where someone had strung lights between the trees, creating a magical canopy over the vegetable plots and flower beds. "I don't know," Amelia admitted. "For the first time in my adult life, I have no plan, no strategy, no 5-year projection. It's terrifying and exhilarating at the same time." "You could start your own firm," Sophia suggested. "Use your expertise to help communities instead of corporations." "With what capital?" "My entire fortune is tied up in Carter Industries stock. If I resign, I'll have enough to live comfortably, but not enough to compete with the corporate law firms that developers usually hire." Sophia stopped walking and turned to face her. "What if you didn't need to compete with them? What if you worked with communities that can't afford corporate law firms at all? Pro bono work? Community advocacy. There are neighborhoods all over the city facing the same pressures as this one. They need someone who understands how the system works, someone who can level the playing field." Amelia considered this, imagining a life spent fighting for Carmen's Cafe instead of helping corporations eliminate places like it. "It would mean giving up everything I've built." "Would it?" Sophia asked gently. "Or would it mean building something better?" They had reached Sophia's apartment building, a converted brownstone with ivy climbing the walls and window boxes full of herbs. Sophia hesitated at the door, then turned back to Amelia. "I know this is complicated," she said. "I know you're facing an impossible choice between the life you've built and the life you might want, but I need you to know that whatever you decide, these past few weeks they've been the best part of my year." "Mine too," Amelia said softly. "I'm falling in love with you," Sophia said, the words hanging in the air between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. "I'm falling in love with the woman who fights for community gardens and explains property law to 7-year-olds and looks at the world like she's seeing it for the first time." Amelia felt her carefully constructed walls finally crumble completely. "I'm falling in love with you too. And that terrifies me more than losing my company, or my fortune, or my reputation." "Why?" "Because I don't know how to love someone without trying to control them. I don't know how to be vulnerable without building defenses. I don't know how to be the person you're falling in love with." Sophia stepped closer, close enough that Amelia could smell her perfume and see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "You don't have to know how," Sophia said, echoing her words from their first walk in the rain. "You just have to be willing to try." The next morning, Amelia sat in her office one last time, looking out at the city that had been her kingdom. On her desk were 2 documents, her resignation letter and a business plan she had drafted in the early hours of the morning for something called Carter Community Advocacy. At exactly 9 a.m., she walked into the boardroom where her former colleagues waited for her decision. "I resign," she said simply, sliding the letter across the table to Richard. "Effective immediately." "I'm sorry it came to this, Amelia," he said, though his relief was evident. "You built something remarkable here." "Yes," she agreed. "I did. And now I'm going to build something better." As she cleaned out her office, packing the few personal items she had allowed herself in this sterile space, Amelia found herself thinking about Sophia's documentary subjects, people who had chosen meaning over money, community over conquest, love over control. For the first time in her life, she was about to become one of those stories. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Whatever you decided, I'm proud of you for choosing authentically." Amelia typed back, "I chose you. I chose us. I chose the person I want to become." The response came immediately. "I can't wait to see who that is." As Amelia walked out of Carter Industries for the last time, she felt something she had never experienced before. The terrifying, exhilarating freedom of not knowing what came next. The Ice Queen was gone, melted away by the warmth of genuine connection and the fire of fighting for something that mattered. In her place stood a woman ready to build a new kind of empire, one measured not in dollars and dominance, but in communities protected and stories preserved and love courageously chosen over fear. The city stretched out before her, full of neighborhoods like the village, full of people like Carmen who needed someone to fight for them. And walking beside her, ready to document every step of this new journey, was Sophia, the woman who had seen past the armor to the artist underneath, who had shown her that the greatest risk of all was not in falling, but in never allowing yourself to fly. 3 months later, Carter Community Advocacy won its first major case, successfully blocking a development that would have displaced 300 families in the Bronx. The victory made the front page of the local papers, and Sophia's documentary about the fight premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival to standing ovations. But the moment Amelia treasured most was smaller, quieter. Standing in Carmen's cafe on a Sunday morning, watching Sophia teach a group of neighborhood kids how to use a camera, seeing the future they were building together, one story, one community, one choice at a time. The Ice Queen had melted completely, and in her place had emerged someone Amelia was finally proud to be, a woman who had learned that the greatest empire of all was the one built on love, authenticity, and the courage to choose connection over control. In the end, the blind date that was supposed to be her last had become her first, the first step toward the life she had always been meant to live, the first chapter in a love story that would reshape everything she thought she knew about success, and the first day of becoming the person she had always been underneath the armor she no longer needed to wear.